Qualys Scanner Appliance. Now, when it comes to the Scanner Appliance, we have two types of appliances which are available: a physical scanner appliance and a virtual scanner appliance. Now, when it comes to a physical scanner appliance, it's a physical appliance that you need to purchase from Qualys, which is no more available. It is only available for existing customers who were using physical scanner appliances in the past. And now those customers are also encouraged to switch to virtual scanner appliance because Qualys has completely stopped manufacturing physical scanner appliance. So physical scanner appliance is out of scope. Let's talk about virtual scanner appliance. So we are going to study about virtual scanner appliance. Let's first understand what is this scanner appliance, what all it can do, and then we will do a hands-on lab wherein we will provision a virtual scanner appliance in Microsoft Azure. So for this, I'll share a document with you all. The document is on. It's an official document from Qualys, which talks about scanner appliances, which has all the information about a scanner appliance. It will also contain steps to deploy a scanner appliance so that while we deploy the scanner appliance today, you can have this document open. I'm say on if you're using multiple screens, then probably on a second screen. If you're using only one screen, then you can use Alt Tab to switch to this document all the time. Qualys Virtual Scanner Appliance User Guide. Let me know when you can. You just need to click on it and download it on your local system. So this is a Virtual Scanner Appliance User Guide. And this guide has all the information that we need basically with respect to Virtual Scanner Appliance. This guide basically talks about the limitations and all capabilities. So that's what we are going to configure now. We are going to configure this Virtual Scanner Appliance by, I'm saying we will not follow this guide because, but this guide is for your reference. And this guide also contains step-by-step instructions to follow to configure a virtual scanner appliance plus initial some additional information also. So we are going to configure the virtual scanner appliance now in our respective lab environment. Okay. So let's go through the documentation. Now, once we are done with the connector appliance, cloud agent, once we are done, so we are done with cloud connector. We are looking at appliance. We will also look at agent. Probably today or tomorrow. Once we are done with all of these sensors, then we will compare and correlate, and we will see that which method is applicable in a specific use case. So there's a separate documentation or separate table from Qualys that basically talks about all the sensors as well as the specific use case for those sensors. And you will realize that these sensors are not substitute of one another. They complement one another, which means depending on your environment type, whether on-premises, cloud, or hybrid, you can use a combination of sensors, right? And you don't need to pay for them because so Qualys license is not based on the sensor. The amount that you pay to Qualys at the end of the day is not based on the sensor. It is based on the asset, per asset license. So if you have 1,000 assets that you are protecting through Qualys or that you are running vulnerability management or any other module of Qualys, you will pay for those 1,000 licenses, which basically means you can have unlimited scanners, unlimited agents, unlimited connectors, and Qualys is not charging you for them. Qualys is charging you for the number of assets that you are protecting using Qualys. That's the logic here. So let's just go ahead and talk about the scanner appliance. Okay, so it says it's easy to add a virtual scanner. You can add a virtual scanner to your account in just a couple of minutes, which is true up to certain extent. Yes, it is exactly a couple of minutes, which is less than 60 minutes. Then you will be ready to scan devices and web applications on your internal network. So now you know that virtual scanner is basically for web applications on your internal networks. Scan devices and web applications for your internal network. So anything that is internal to your environment, internal to your network, internal to your infrastructure, we basically use virtual scanner appliances for scanning them. Now supported virtualization platforms. Since it's a virtual scanner appliance, it's virtual, then where exactly you can deploy this appliance? So the supported platform is uh, you can deploy it on a desktop or a laptop, the scanner appliance, and that desktop and laptop must be running either VMware workstation, which is your type 2 hypervisor or client virtualization hypervisor, VMware Workstation Player or Workstation Player or Fusion. This is basically from VMware. You can run it on a client or server also. If you're running it on a client or server, then it should be running VMware vSphere, vCenter, Citrix Zen Server, and Microsoft Windows Server Hyper-V. So you can basically deploy this appliance in a VMware virtualized environment, in a Microsoft Hyper-V virtualized environment, as well as Citrix virtualized environment also. You can also deploy this appliance in cloud. So what all clouds you can use? We can deploy this appliance in AWS, EC2, VPC. We can deploy it in Microsoft Azure. We can deploy it in Google Cloud. We can deploy it in OpenStack Cloud. We can deploy it in Oracle Cloud Infrastructure and OCI Classic, which is the old version of Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. And we can also deploy this appliance in Alibaba Cloud. So these are the cloud vendors where you can deploy this appliance. So our focus is going to be on Microsoft Azure. We are going to deploy this appliance in Microsoft Azure exactly in the same network where we have our resources. If you deploy this appliance to a different network, then the appliance must have a clear line of sight to the asset network where your assets are deployed. Now, want to choose the right platform, so it basically helps you with the platform. So since we have Microsoft Azure, we'll go with Microsoft Azure. Now, what should be the size of the appliance? That's the main question. Because at the end of the day, you are going to use this appliance for running vulnerability scans or for managing other modules of Qualys. So sizing is very important. If you undersize the appliance and overutilize it, it may result in error. It may result in partial performance of the appliance module or Qualys module. If you over configure the appliance and underutilize it, then you are unnecessarily wasting money. So you need to make sure that you run this appliance and you make optimal use of this appliance, where sizing is very important. So what Qualys says that the appliance can be the I'm saying as per Qualys, the I would say the reasonable size or the configuration of the appliance is always 1 to 2 CPU cores and 8 GB of RAM. That's the reasonable size. Now, depending on the number of instances that you are uh, running vulnerability scans or you are protecting using this appliance, you can also increase the size of the appliance or decrease the size. So first we are going to deploy this appliance. We are going to see how we can make use of this appliance. Once that part is done, then I'll talk about some use cases for this appliance in terms of common troubleshooting scenarios, or where do you see the current utilization, resource utilization on the appliance? How do you go about increasing or decreasing the utilization? How do you go about optimizing the appliances? Because they are the a broker of Qualys SaaS module, and if these appliances do not work properly, your vulnerability management will be compromised. The entire vulnerability management module or any other module that Qualys that you have subscribed from Qualys, which is getting triggered through the appliance. Okay. Now it says that instance snapshot and cloning is not allowed, which basically means you cannot build one appliance and clone that appliance, or take a snapshot of that appliance and create another appliance, something that we typically do in the cloud environment or in the VMware or Hyper-V environment. Moving or exporting instance is not allowed, which is also another thing, that you cannot move the appliance from one virtualization environment to another, or you cannot export the appliance configuration. So nothing is allowed. So what you can do, you will always create an appliance from scratch. Now, what do I need? The virtual scanner option must be turned on for your account. That's the another thing. This is the prerequisite. So when you purchase a Qualys license, at that point in time, Qualys may probably ask you if you want to go with agent-based protection or you want to go with appliances option also. So if your appliances option is not turned on, you will not be able to provision the appliance. It says contact Qualys support or technical account manager if you would like us to turn on this option for you. Now, in order to provision a virtual appliance or in order to use a virtual appliance, you must be a manager or manager, virtual appliance role. So either you should be a manager role or sub-user role with managed virtual appliance permissions. So you don't need to bother about it because you all are, account managers for Qualys. Now, how do we add a virtual scanner appliance? Let's go ahead and provision this appliance. So all of you, uh, please navigate to your Qualys dashboard and let's navigate to the VMDR module. So appliance view is available under VMDR. Okay, so what we are going to do, we are now going to configure a virtual scanner appliance because we have seen that there are challenges with connector approach, cloud connector approach, and even the cloud connector, even it works perfectly fine, it will not be able to provide deep dive visibility into my assets with respect to identifying vulnerabilities from application and operating system perspective. So I would need to make use of some additional modules, which is my virtual scanner appliance. So we are going to provision a virtual scanner appliance in Microsoft Azure. Is everyone ready for it? Great. Let's get started. So if you want to provision any scanner appliance in Qualys, the module that you need to be on is VMDR module. Let's click on VMDR module, all of you. In the VMDR module, you will need to navigate to scans. So I navigate to scans. In the scan module, you will need to click on scan once again. On the blue strip, click on scan once again. And after that, when you click on scan once again, then you will see an option that says appliances. This is where you will add or remove an appliance, a virtual scanner appliance as well as a physical appliance. So we'll click on appliances here. Now we are on the appliances blade. I want each one of you to be on this blade and disregard this disregard this entry that you already see because I have tested this feature in the trial before I am covering this feature in the training. It is always advisable to test a capability, especially when you are working in a trial account before you basically deliver that, because sometimes trial has its own a set of issues. So I've tested this capability. This is working perfectly fine, and we can also go through it. So when you click on appliances, you see this window wherein it will showcase all the appliances that you have. Now, since you don't have any appliance, you will click on new. When you click on new, you see a couple of options here. First is scanner appliance. Second is virtual scanner appliance. Third is containerized scanner appliance. Fourth is replace scanner appliance, and fifth is download. Let's look at the first option, which is scanner appliance. So when I click on scanner appliance, it says activate scanner appliance. Enter the activation code shown in the LCD panel of your appliance after you plug it in. So this capability is basically for physical scanner appliance. If you have a physical scanner appliance that you have deployed in your on-premises or in your virtual network, you just need to plug that appliance into a power source, configure that appliance with your local area network in your LAN, make sure that the appliance gets an IP address from your LAN environment. And then on the appliance LCD panel, you will see a code. That code you need to type here and click on activate. And then the appliance will be connected with this Qualys module, I'm saying with your specific account module, and you will then be able to configure rest of the options that you need to do as part of the appliance configuration. So that's basically for the physical appliance configuration. Since we don't have a physical appliance, we will click on cancel. Is Qualys providing physical scanner appliance currently? No, Qualys doesn't provide physical scanner appliances at all to any new customer. They have completely stopped manufacturing. So they never manufactured physical scanner appliance by themselves. They basically had a third party who would manufacture it for Qualys. Then Qualys would put their logo and ship it to the customer. Qualys has stopped providing physical appliances to new customers. However, for existing customers who have been using physical scanner appliances for a long time, Qualys still has an option to ship additional physical scanner appliances. But Qualys would always encourage customers to switch to virtual scanner appliances because they are cost effective. Okay, next. So we are not going with the scanner appliance option. We are going with the virtual scanner appliance option. Now, what is this containerized scanner appliance? This is basically for containers. So if you have containerized workloads, like if you have Kubernetes clusters, if you have Dockers, if you have containerized applications, and if you want to scan those applications, you will always use this appliance, which is containerized scanner appliance. Since my workloads is pure play virtual machines, I will use virtual scanner appliance. So in a production environment, you will use a combination of both, because if you happen to have containerization, containerized applications in your environment, you will use this one. And for non-containerization applications or virtual machines, you will use virtual scanner appliance. Okay, so we'll click on virtual scanner appliance. Now, when we click on virtual scanner appliance, since I have a trial account, in trial, I've got a total of 5 licenses, 5 scanner appliance. One, I'm already using it. So I'm left with 4, you are left with 5. There are 3 options. First is get started. So get started will basically help you to pick and choose a specific use case or a specific scanner appliance. So let's click on the first option, get started. Now here it says download virtual scanner image, virtual scanner name, choose a virtualization platform. So if I just give it a name, let's say sample virtual scanner appliance, and now I need to select this platform. So I need to tell Qualys that this virtual scanner appliance that I'm going to deploy, where exactly I'm deploying it. So I have options like VMware, OpenStack, Hyper-V, Citrix, Amazon, Microsoft Azure. All these options are available, right? Now let's say if I choose Microsoft Azure and then I click on next. When I click on next, it says that configure your virtual scanner appliance in the cloud. And once you're done with the configuration, then come back to this window basically. That's what it is trying to say here. Now, if I just say that I have done the configuration in the cloud, then the next. So next step, it says this is your code. Personalization code. This is like an activation code. So you are deploying a virtual scanner appliance outside of Qualys, outside of this module, in Azure, AWS, GCP, in on-premises data center, on Hyper-V, on VMware, on Citrix, wheresoever you're deploying it. How will you enable that scanner appliance to communicate and collaborate with this module, with this code? So this code basically is the key. It's like an authentication key. It's like a secret or a password. So you will need to put this code into your virtual scanner appliance, and then the virtual scanner appliance will automatically be connected to this account, to your Qualys account, right? This is the code. So that's the process basically. Once you put this code into the appliance and then you hit check activation, your appliance will get activated. So we'll just close it because we are not going this way. We'll click on virtual scanner appliance once again. So get started is done. The second option is download image only. So you can also download the image for virtual scanner appliance. You just need to select your respective environment and click on download. Right. So if you want to download it for VMware, you can just hit download. It will download the VHT in open virtualization format, OVF format, that you can directly use to build a virtual machine in VMware. That's what this option is. So since our environment is Microsoft Azure, if I select Microsoft Azure image, you can see it says Azure Marketplace. It doesn't give me a download option here. For cloud environment, all 3 cloud environment, it says marketplace, marketplace, marketplace. So what do you mean by marketplace here? Marketplace basically means that in your respective cloud environment, there is a marketplace module. Navigate to that module, search for Qualys virtual appliance, you will find it there. That's what it is trying to say. So since our objective is to download this appliance in Azure, we'll navigate to Marketplace. So from this moment onwards, let's go ahead. Let's go to the Marketplace. So basically, let's navigate to your Azure subscription. So all of you, please sign into Microsoft Azure. Okay, so while we are deploying this appliance, which will take at least an hour. So in the Azure portal, all you need to do is in the search bar, type Marketplace. And the first option that you see here, the bag sign, which shows a shopping bag. Click on this and it will take you to Marketplace. Marketplace is like a shopping mall. It basically contains third-party solutions from all Azure partners, from all independent software vendors, and one of them is Qualys. So in the Marketplace, in the search button, you can type Qualys. When you type Qualys, it will show you in the drop-down a couple of options. Qualys Virtual Scanner Appliance, Qualys VM Solution, Qualys Gateway Service, Qualys Virtual Firewall Appliance. Qualys also provides you a firewall, web application firewall. So I will select the second option, which is Qualys Virtual Scanner Appliance, because that's what I'm interested in. So when I select that option, I see this Virtual Scanner Appliance from Qualys, Qualys Virtual Scanner Appliance. So you just need to hit create, and then you will see this appliance. There is only one option, which is Qualys Virtual Scanner Appliance for Azure. Hit create. You need to be on the screen. Let me know when you are on the screen. So what you're doing basically, you are basically building a virtual machine in Azure, which will have Qualys image or Qualys software pre-installed. And it's a Linux virtual machine. Earlier, you would get an option to provision to select the operating system, basically whether you want to provision a Windows-based virtual appliance or Linux-based virtual appliance. But now that Windows-based virtual appliance option is deprecated. You only have this virtual appliance, Linux-based virtual appliance. The best part is, even if you have no experience with Linux operating system, you don't need to worry about it, because at any point in time, any management and maintenance of this virtual appliance will be done from Qualys portal. From Azure, you're going to do absolutely nothing. You just need to build this appliance in Azure and activate it using the personalization code that you will receive from Qualys. After that, all you need to ensure is that appliance should be up and running all the time. The virtual machine, which is holding the appliance, should be up and running. That's it. Any configuration related to the appliance will be done from the Qualys UI. So you don't need to be an expert in Linux at all. Okay, let's provision this virtual appliance now. So select your respective resource group, guys. Ours is Qualys testing. Which one? Qualys training. Qualys training. Okay. So select your respective resource group and then provide the name of this virtual appliance. I'm just putting a name. This is VM name basically. Qualys Virtual Scanner Appliance, Qualys VSA. In your case, guys, please make sure that you put your first name as a prefix, so that when you have multiple scanner appliances in Azure, I would be able to identify, or you would be able to identify which one is yours. So I will also follow the same option, which is Raghuveer hyphen Qualys VSA. So after putting the name, select your region. My region is East US, so I'll go with East US. But probably your region, whatever region you have provisioned your virtual machine yesterday, select the same region. Your appliance and your assets must be in the same region. Availability set, no availability options, no infrastructure redundancy required. Security type is standard. Image is by default selected. You don't need to change it. This image is for scanner appliance. In the size, select B2S, which is 2 CPU core, 4 GB RAM. In cloud, 2 CPU core basically means 4 CPU cores. So select 2 CPU cores. I'm sorry, select B2S size, which is more than sufficient for this appliance. Then authentication type is SSH public key or password. Now, as I said, at any point in time, you would not need to log into this appliance for doing any activity. However, we can still create a password for the appliance. So I'll put a password, same Azure user and same admin at 123456789. In mount port rule, since it's a Linux appliance, it will allow traffic on inbound port 2022 TCP/IP 2022, which is okay. So we are done with the first part. Next tab is disk. On disk tab, the same thing that you need to do. Make sure that the OS disk type is selected as standard HDD. That's it. The only thing that you need to do. The size of the disk will be 56 GB by default. We are not going to change it. That's it. Nothing else you need to do. Then comes networking. Now, this is very important. If you have multiple networks and you want to separate appliance network from your asset network, you can always do that. You can keep appliance in a separate management network and your asset will be in your production network. In that case, your appliance must have a clear line of sight to your asset network. When I say clear line of sight, it basically means there has to be a routing allowed. So appliance should be able to reach out to your assets so that it can discover the assets and it can run vulnerability scan on the assets, right? So there has to be a clear line of sight between the appliance and the assets. So I'm going to select my network. You need to select your network. There is only one network, so it will be by default selected. Just you need to select your network and then delete public IP and NIC when the VM is deleted. Check this box so that when you delete the appliance, its public IP and NIC is also deleted. That's it. Rest of the options, management, monitoring, advanced, and tags, they should go with default options. So I'll directly click on review plus create. Sorry, hit review plus create, but do not create the appliance. There is one more step that you need to do. Okay. Personalization code. If this would have been a Windows virtual machine, after this would have been provisioned, I would have taken remote of it, and then I would have gone to Qualys, Qualys icon on the virtual machine, clicked on it, and then done the installation by providing the personalization code. Since this is Linux virtual machine, I cannot do that option. So what I will do, I will go to the advanced tab. On the advanced tab, there is a field which says user data. Enable user data. I will check this box. When I check this box, it will open the box. It will show me the box. In this box, I will type the code, personalization code. Now, what is the use case of this utility? The use case of this utility is that after your VM is provisioned, if you want to run certain script on the VM, if you want to deploy certain application on the VM, you can put the code into user data box. So as soon as your VM is provisioned, the user data box, whatever input it has, those inputs will get executed. So as soon as this VM will get provisioned, since it's a Qualys virtual scanner appliance, it would start to look for personalization code. So I will put the personalization code here, and then I will provision the virtual machine. Let's get the personalization code. So on this page, we will leave this browser page as it is, and we will switch to your Qualys module. In the Qualys module, we'll click on New Virtual Scanner Appliance. And this time I'll select the third option, which is I have my image. So I already have a virtual scanner appliance image in Azure, which I'm provisioning. I'll select the third option and I'll hit continue. Provide the name of the appliance. So I'll say Raghuveer. So it is not mandatory that the name here and name in Azure should be the same. They are two different places. You can keep different name or same name. Qualys Virtual Scanner Appliance. I'll provide the name and then it says download the appliance and whatnot. So that part I'm assuming I've done. And directly I'll come to this window, which is personalization code. I'll copy this code, personalization code, and put it on a notepad. So I've copied the code and put it on a notepad. Now I will navigate to, there is a code that you need to type. Let me just see where it is. So this is the format in which you need to put it. First code. Okay. Now let's go back to your virtual machine, virtual machine provisioning blade, where it says user data field, type in caps, first code, which in short is known as personalization code, equal sign, and then copy the personalization code. This is what you need to do. Yep. First code equals, and then you need to copy the personalization code. If you have copied it on a notepad, take it from there. Otherwise, you can take it from Qualys window also. So get the code. After you get the code, after you put the code in the field, please make sure there is no space after the code, and please make sure there is no space at the beginning of the line. What some people do, they leave a space, and because of which the VM will get provisioned, but it will not get activated. It's a common error that most of the people do. Make sure there is no space at the beginning or at the end. And your cursor should always be at the last string. After this, you can click on Review plus Create. All right, the virtual machine is getting created. So once this virtual machine is created, we'll navigate to the Qualys portal over here where it shows the virtualization personalization code, and we will click on check activation. Right now, we will not do it. This is a known issue. I've seen this in production also. Sometimes what people do, they provision the virtual machine in Azure while the virtual machine is getting provisioned. At the same time, they click on check activation. Now, the moment you will click on check activation, what Qualys will do? Qualys will then start to look for a virtual scanner appliance with this personalization code. But then the challenge is this appliance does not exist yet because the appliance is getting provisioned. And that is where it will go into the loop. Qualys will not be able to find the VM with the personalization code since the VM did not exist. And on this screen, after you click on check activation, the process will continue to run for a couple of minutes to an hour. It will never finish. So it's a known issue. So the best practice is first make sure that the virtual scanner appliance is up and running. Once the appliance is up and running, then you need to click on check activation so that Qualys can actually discover that appliance and register that appliance with this account. Is everyone with me on this? All right, so we will wait for this appliance, for this virtual machine to complete the provisioning, and then we will click on check activation. While this is getting done, if you have any questions, you can ask me. This is the time when you can ask questions.
So after validation passed, we just need to create, right? No further steps.
You want to say in the virtual machine tab?
In the virtual machine, yes.
Yeah. Have you put the personalization code in the user data field?
Yes, I did it.
Yeah, please provision the virtual machine tab.
Okay.
That's it. Now they have made it more easy. See, until last year, when Qualys would provide you a Windows-based image, then what you would do, you would provision the VM, log into the VM on the main screen, the home screen or desktop, you will find a Qualys icon. You will double click on the icon and then it will start the installation process. During the installation process, it will ask you for the personalization code. You will put the personalization code and then it will take a couple of minutes to activate the appliance. And So this is how you would do it in the past until last year. Now Qualys have deprecated that Windows image because the cost of that image was higher. So to optimize the cost, Qualys started with Linux kernel. Since it is Linux kernel, Qualys gave you an opportunity to put the code into the user data field so that as soon as the VM is provisioned, the code will get activated. Now that my VM is provisioned, I will just go to my virtual machines tab just to make sure that I see my VM as running. Okay, I validated that my VM is running, the status is running. Now I will navigate to Qualys view and click on check activation. So you can see what it does. It says connecting to Qualys cloud platform and updating scanner software. So now it will search your virtual scanner appliance and it will update the scanner software. The scanner appliance software, it will update. That's it. This process will take a couple of minutes. So we will wait until this process is complete. And remember, there is a prerequisite here. On this virtual machine, you should have port 443 outbound to internet open. If you're provisioning virtual scanner appliance in your LAN where you have a firewall and all outbound traffic to internet is routed through firewall or proxy, then you will need to configure in the firewall or in the proxy unrestricted access from this virtual appliance on port 443 outbound to internet. If you have a restricted environment wherein you cannot configure unrestricted outbound access to internet on 443, in that case, you will need to connect with Qualys. Qualys will provide its public IP ranges for the specific Qualys data center where your account is configured. You will need to take those ranges from Qualys, share it with your network security team, who will then create an exception in the firewall or proxy to allow unrestricted outbound access on port 443 to those IPs. So that's one additional step that you would do in a production environment, which we are not doing here in training because A, we don't have any restriction in Microsoft Azure network. It has all traffic allowed. You can see here on this virtual machine, this is my virtual firewall. If I go to the outbound, in outbound, all traffic is allowed to internet. So I'm not doing this step here. Is everyone on the same page wherein your machine is provisioned and you're waiting for activation? Okay. So Alexander, is activation done for you?
Yes, it seems the Europe region is faster.
Absolutely. See, now I envy you because in
Yeah.
my case it is still happening and in your case it is completed. See, that's how that's how it works. So few
Yes,
things will work faster for me, few things will work faster for you.
that's fine. That's equity.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll wait for this process to complete. And say I've done that yesterday. I tried it yesterday. You can see there is an existing appliance in the backend on my screen that I deployed yesterday, which is 7th of January. It exactly took 15 minutes to complete the activation process in India. I'm saying in my case, so I know it will take 15 minutes. All right. In my case, it is completed successfully. The appliance got activated and registered with Qualys module or with my Qualys account successfully, and I can see the status. I hope it is the same case for all of you. Okay, let's move on, guys.
Raghu, if we missed that, wrongly entered that purse code, that value, we can edit the VM.
You can always do that. So let's say you have entered the incorrect code, then you can navigate to the VM. This is the VM, right? Hope my screen is visible to everyone. You can navigate to the VM. I say click on the VM name, and then on the VM properties blade, under settings, there is an option that reads operating system. Click on operating system. Over here, it says modify user data. Check this box and then you can modify the personalization code and click on apply.
Okay.
This is how you can do it.
Okay, operating system. Okay, thanks.
I'll just cover some theoretical aspects, and meanwhile, all of you would have your Scanner appliance up and running and active also. Sure? Okay. So let's look at some theoretical aspects here. So the first thing is, where do you see all your Scanner appliances? This is the place. In the VMDR module, you need to navigate to Scan. Under Scan, in the blue ribbon, you will see Appliances tab. Under Appliances tab, you will see all the virtual Scanner appliances. Not the virtual Scanner appliances, all appliances, which means physical appliance, virtual Scanner appliance, containerized appliance, all appliances you will see here under Appliances tab. How do you know that a specific appliance is healthy and up and running? You will always see this green icon here, right at the beginning of the appliance name. You will see this green icon. This green icon, basically they are two plug basically. It basically shows that it is connected to the source. The source is Microsoft Azure in this case. So if you see this blue icon here, it means that this appliance is up and running and this appliance is connected to its source, right? Or the traffic between appliance and Qualys module is healthy. If you don't see this green icon, if you only see one plug sign, it basically means that the appliance is not connected. Why this appliance is showing as not connected? Because this Qualys VSA, this VM in Microsoft Azure, I have intentionally shut down. You can say here, Qualys VSA. So you can see this VM here, Qualys VSA. This is right now stop deallocated. And this is the reason on my portal, it shows not connected, right? All right, next. The personalization code using which you have activated the appliance is also visible here. So if your appliance is not getting activated, if it is taking time, all you need to do is just make sure that it is the same code which is there, which is configured in the VM. If you've not configured the same code, you need to match the code with the code which is there in the VM, navigate to the VM, go to settings, operating system, and then check the box that says modify personalization data. Please make sure that the code here and the code here should be the same. Next, it also shows you the LAN IP. LAN IP basically means the IP address of the appliance. This is the IP address that is given to the appliance, because my appliance, this appliance is part of the network. I'm saying this appliance is part of the same network, which is Qualys VNet Web Subnet. And this appliance has got 192.168.1.7 IP address. Next, polling, 180 seconds. Every 3 minutes, Qualys will check if the appliance is healthy, if the appliance is responding. So it will send ICMP traffic to the appliance over the internet, and appliance responds to that traffic every 3 minutes. Scanner version, this is the version of the appliance. Then signature, this is the hash signature of the appliance. And this is the last update of the appliance. Last update basically means when was the last time this appliance was updated. And in the end, it shows you the platform where the appliance is configured. So right now the platform is Microsoft Azure. If the appliance is in VMware or Hyper-V, it will show VMware and Hyper-V. If it is in Citrix, it will show Citrix also. Right? So when you click on the one more icon that you have not seen is this icon. This arrow icon, which is connected arrows. This icon will be, I'm saying, when your appliance is running a scan, when your appliance is busy, when your appliance is running a scan, at that point in time, this icon will be highlighted. So by looking at this icon, you would know that currently my appliance is busy, probably performing a vulnerability scan, right? So this is about the appliance. Now, when you click on the appliance, you see the appliance ID. This appliance ID is nothing but the personalization code, because appliance is recognized with the code. Next, you can see the owner of the appliance. You can see when it was connected for the first time. You can see the connection time frame also connected on, and you can see that it was verified and the current status is connected. Heartbeat check missed 0, which means every 3 minutes appliance is responding to the polling. This is the engine version. This is the latest signature version. And this part is very important, which is available capacity. In a production environment, you will have multiple appliances and you will have multiple vulnerability scans running. And those scans will be running via appliances. So there is a probability that your appliance is not available. So never ever use an appliance, or whenever you feel that the scan is taking more time than expected or scan is resulting in an error, you should always come and check the available capacity of the appliance. Right now it is 100% available. It basically means that there is absolutely no usage of this appliance. The appliance is not in use now. But when I run a scan, I can come back to this window and I can see that some percentage of availability will be deprecated. So appliance would be probably 80% available, 60% available, which means the whatever. So if it says 80%, it means that 20% of the capacity of this appliance is getting utilized. Okay, fine. Let's move on. So this is about the appliance. Now, what all actions I can take on this appliance? Right next to the appliance, you will see Action tab. I'm moving the cursor here. Click on Action tab. You can click on Info. It will show you the information of the appliance. I'm saying detailed information about this appliance. You can see the scan capacity right now. It is 100% available. It says the trend is calculated every 6 hours interval. Select an area of the chart to zoom in. So it's 100% available. Rest of the information about VM information, WAN settings, LAN setting, proxy settings, user info, all that information is here. That's details of the detailed information of the appliance. Then edit. You can edit the configuration of the appliance also. For example, you want to change the name of the appliance, you can change the name. You can change the polling interval also. Instead of 3 minutes, you can probably say 5 minutes, 10 minutes. You can change the name also. Version, you can't change anything here. This all comes by default. The other thing that you need to remember is you don't have to manually update the appliance. Qualys automatically does it. So Qualys manages the appliance by itself. You don't need to update it. Next, delete. If you want to delete this appliance, you can hit delete. It will take confirmation from you, and then you can delete this appliance also. So these are the steps that is related to the appliance. Is everyone with me so far before we move on to the next topic? Okay. Now that we have our appliance up and running, the next step is to perform a scan, perform a vulnerability scan, right? Using this appliance. So this appliance can also perform a perimeter scan. This appliance can also perform an in-depth scan. Perimeter scan basically means appliance will only scan the asset from outside. And in-depth scan basically means appliance will also authenticate to your asset, and then it will perform an in-depth scan. So these are the two types of scan that you can perform using the appliance. So before you perform any scan, you will need to configure a couple of things before you perform the scan. These are the options that you need to configure. So let's start and configure those options. So the first option is option profile. These are your option profiles. As I told you, option profile is the vulnerability database against which you run the vulnerability scan. These are the default option profiles which are available, and they are managed by Qualys by themselves. However, if you want to create a custom profile, which means you want to run a vulnerability scan focusing on a specific vulnerability, on a specific common vulnerability exploit, on a specific vulnerability ID, you can also do that part, which means you can click on new and you can create a separate option profile. You want to run a PCI DSS scan that we will talk about in policy compliance module. You can run that from here, or you can import it from library also. So you can create your separate option profiles also. However, uh, I do not recommend doing that part because vulnerability management is not a comprehensive cybersecurity strategy. There is more to cybersecurity. So when you have multiple solutions like EDR, MDR, XDR, vulnerability management, SASB, CASB, SASE, BLP solutions, there is a lot that you need to do as a security professional. So sometimes you need to leave it to the service provider to take the due diligence and do the job for you. So most of the customers would always go with the Qualys recommended option profile, which means you are leaving it to Qualys to go ahead, use its entire vulnerability management database to run vulnerability scans against. That's what option profiles are. So you have all of these option profiles, 2008 cents 20 options, payment card industry options, Qualys top 20 options. Now, if you want to know what all is included in these option profiles, you can select the option profile. It will load the details of it, that what exactly it is going to scan. So you can see in the option profile, it scans these TCP ports, UDP port. It will create a map of information gathering on host. It will do system authentication. It will do additional scanning. It will ignore all of this. So you see all the information here, right? So I'm selecting the standard one, the default one. This is the default one. So basically it scans everything. So this is your option profile. So we are not going to create any option profile. I just wanted to show you the option here, that this is one tab wherein you will see the, when you will see the option profile, and so that you will know that this is what Qualys is basically using to perform a vulnerability management scan. Next is authentication. This is very important. If you are running, uh, if you are running a vulnerability management scan from perimeter perspective, wherein you don't want to authenticate to the virtual machine and you don't want to scan at the operating system level or installed application level, then you don't need to perform an authenticated scan. But if your intention is to perform a full blown scan, which includes the network parameters of my asset, which includes operating system, which includes all deployed softwares and applications. If this is the intention of yours, then you will need to configure the authenticated scan so that your appliance can pick up the authentication, uh, can pick up the login credentials or authentication credentials from here and use it while performing the scan. So let's go ahead and put the authentication credentials here. So over here in the authentication, you can click on new, and here you can select your operating system. Here you can provide the authentications for all of this services. So right now I have a couple of Windows machines. I will provide the authentication. So I'll select operating system as Windows. Okay. Now here I will put the authentication credential name, which is Windows login credentials. Next, here I'll put the login credentials for my Windows. Now, in a production environment, your clients, they are part of a domain, and some of the clients will also be part of a work group, and they are outside of domain. So in our case, since we are not using a domain, all our virtual machines are in work group, which basically means they have local authentication information. So instead of domain, we will select local. So we select local, and then we will provide the authentication parameters here for our virtual machines. Now, sometimes what happens, we used solution privileged access management solutions like CyberArk. So if you're using CyberArk or if you're using any authentication vault, you can also configure that vault here so that your virtual scanner appliance will use that vault to pick up the authentication data and use that data to authenticate to your assets. So you can click on authentication vault and you can see the vault type is CyberArk. These are all the authentication server or vault. For example, we have CyberArk, Thycotic, Quest, CA Access. These are all the integrations that Qualys, those are available with Qualys. So since we are not using any of them, we will just go with the basic authentication. And here we will type the username and password of our servers. Now, this is the reason I was asking you to create the common username and password for all the VMs so that when you run the vulnerability management scan, the scanner appliance will pick up the credentials and be able to authenticate to all the VMs and then perform the vulnerability discoveries. In a production environment, we will always use a domain credential. So here we will typically type domain admin credentials. Domain admin by default have local admin access to all the virtual machines, whether they are server or client in that domain. So I'll put the information, which is Azure user. And the password. Okay, so I put the username and password for my virtual machines. Choose authentication protocols. I can choose both the protocols, NTLM version 1, version 2. And then if you want SMB signing also, you can also select SMB signing, but that is not the case here. So you'll not select SMB. So this is what we need to do. So this is how you will create authentication information. So you've selected the authentication information, then you will select assets. Assets basically means the systems which will accept this authentication or which aligns with this authentication. So you can put the IP ranges, you can put the IP addresses of the system, you can put the IP ranges in the tag rule, or you can put the asset tag also, whichever way you are comfortable with, right? So I can put the IP range also of the system. I can click on select IP and I can put the IP range here also. I have this IP range here, which is already discovered. Now, never ever select public IP. You will always, since this is a virtual scanner appliance and it is part of the same network where your assets are, so you will always go with the private IPs, right? So there are multiple options through which you can do it. I can either pick up the network address space of my network. For example, this is my appliance. This is my network, Qualys VNet. And this is my network address space, which is 192.168.1.0/24. So I can go ahead and put this information here. I can put my network address space. The challenge with this approach is now you will pick up your 10 series network address space. Your network address space has 65,535 IPs. So what will happen? When the appliance will run a scan, it will try and search for an asset against each IP range, each IP address, which basically means that the discovery phase of the vulnerability scan would be lengthy. So it is recommended in production environment that you should not keep a larger address space. You should probably keep a smaller address ranges so that your appliance will be quick to identify the assets. If you are going with the IP address, if you are going with the asset tags, then it becomes very easy because all your assets have certain tags on it. I'm assuming that you're following the best practice, which basically says that all assets must be tagged. So you can directly put the asset tags also. For example, include, I can add the tags directly here, which is Azure and Azure resources. That's another thing because I know all my assets have these tags. So I can save it here. So this is how you create that record. Now that record is getting created. It has created. If I want to edit it, I can also edit it once again. Click on details. Okay. Then assets, I've selected the tag. So this tag basically means all assets which have these tags will be included. If I want, I can select the IP range also. And then comments, if I want to put any comments here and save it. That's it. So that's how you basically create the record. Any questions so far? Yes, Prashant.
Actually, I stuck on the authentication part. Can I share my screen?
Please go ahead.
The same issue. When you want to select the IP range, it says it's not allocated to your account. It's like it doesn't see it.
No, I'll tell you why it says, because in Microsoft Azure, first, fourth, and last IP range is reserved for internal purposes, right? That's the reason it says that these IP ranges are not available. Because if you look carefully, okay, so see what error it gives. It says 192.168.1.0, 192.168.1.3, 192.168.1.7, and then from 1.7 to 35, it says that these are not present. These IPs added to the record, these IPs are not present. Why it says they are not present? Because I am not utilized, because I have put my entire address space here. That's the reason it says. You can see 192.168.1.0/24. I have put the entire address space here. So in this address space, these IPs are not available. That's what it is trying to say. But that's the reason I was going with asset part. Because when you go with the asset tag, you will not leave anything behind. If you want to go with IP range, then you will need to put the specific IPs of the VM. For example, if I go to my VM space, which is Qualys, and these are my VMs. These are my VMs. These three are my VMs. So what is the IP address? 1.37, 1.6, and 1.4. These are the IP address. So either I put these IP addresses directly in the authentication record over here instead of this. Say put the specific IPs. Now after putting this IPs, if I save, I will not get the error. It has saved it. You can see here assets are coming. So now it works fine. So either you put the exact IP addresses, because in a production environment, you will notice that IPs will be allocated in a sequence. In our lab environment, what is happening? We have taken a long IP address range and we have very few assets. So by putting the entire range will confuse Qualys, because Qualys will not find those IPs utilized. That's the reason you are getting an error. But when I put the specific IP addresses, it quickly picked up. It quickly took those IP addresses. So to avoid this IP address confusion, because in some production environments, what they do, they create, just to accommodate the future requirements, some network engineers, they intentionally pick up a larger address space, but they actually don't utilize it. And there is a lot of unused IP addresses in that address space. So those unused IP addresses always creates a conflict. They always create conflicts for external softwares like Qualys or any external tool that is going to scan that IP address range. So it will unnecessarily result in delay. It will unnecessarily result in inaccurate results. So to avoid that confusion, we always use tagging method, because tag will only be applicable to an asset when it is discovered. Hope I'm making sense, guys.
Raghuveer, one question. Will this tagging based approach will work if the cloud scanner is not deployed, the perimeter scanner, previous scanner which we discussed?
The previous scanner is not dependent on tagging because previous scanner, the cloud connector is directly connected. Cloud connector directly have access to your environment. So cloud connector is using an external scanner. That is why tagging is not important. But tagging is important here. It is important here because the virtual scanner appliance needs to know what it needs to scan or what is the scope for it. So you are defining the scope here in the authentication records. So you can define scope based on IP address. You can define scope based on asset tag also. So what I'm doing, I'm creating an authentication record and I'm telling it that this authentication record is applicable to these IP addresses, which means the credentials that I put here, these credentials are applicable to these assets. So that when I run a scan using the virtual scanner appliance and select this asset tag, because when you will run a scan, you will all at that point in time, you will also put either IP range or asset tag. So at that point in time, I will select an asset tag and I'll say, pick up this asset tag and pick up this authentication record and go ahead and do the scanning. That's the logic here.
Okay, I get that part, Raghuveer. Sorry, I had to be on and off, so I was not able to fully follow your yesterday's sessions and today's sessions. These asset tags that you are referring to, these asset tags are defined in Azure on each of the assets, is it? From where the asset tags will be picked up?
No, they are defined in Qualys. When you are discovering the assets, at the time of discovery, you will put a tag to those assets. Every asset is tagged in Qualys.
Okay, and that discovery happens through this scanner agent, this scanner or the previous scanner?
Discovery can happen through scanner appliance. Discovery can happen through connector. Discovery can happen through agent also that we will cover probably tomorrow.
Okay, so if we put the asset tags here, if we define what tags are required to be referred to for this authentication thing to work, so it will not have any dependency on the perimeter connector, right? It will be able to it will be able to identify the asset tags on its own.
Yep.
This can
I'll say we see right now what we are doing right now, we are trying to put authentication information. So what we are trying to do here, we have a scanner appliance up and running. Now we want that scanner appliance to scan for vulnerabilities in my assets. In order to scan for vulnerability, scanner appliance will need to authenticate to that asset. And for authentication, scanner appliance will supply username and password. The asset will confirm the accuracy of those username and password and will allow scanner appliance to log in and to scan for vulnerabilities in operating system and all installed applications. That is why we are putting this authentication record. If we don't want,
no, I get that part, but how are the tags which we are defining here? The same tags are applied on the servers also. Somewhere we'll have to define those tags, right? We'll have to map those tags with the servers also.
Yeah, so they are defined through Cloud Connector because our assets are discovered through Cloud Connector. So I have defined those tags here. I'll show you.
So that means if we don't provision the cloud connector, so this tag-based scanning will not work for the virtual
that will
scanner
still
also.
work. That will still work. In that case, see, at the end of the day, your asset must be visible here. It's not that you can only use tags using connector. Once you have your asset inventory up and running, you can also apply tags manually to that asset. For example, these are my assets you can see here, right? Now you will find that all of these assets have Azure tag here. All of these assets, right? Azure tag is here. Look at the tag column, the last column, you will see the tags here. Now let's say I want to apply more tags to these assets. So I can also apply additional tags to these assets. Tagging is done so that we can easily perform vulnerability management and you can apply tags here. So you can click on asset, any of the asset, and you can click on add tags.
Okay, so a couple of questions, Sir Raghuveer. These tags are local to Azure, right? Whatever tags we can put on.
No. It has
not Azure,
nothing to
local
do with
to
Azure.
Qualys. Local to Qualys, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
The tags which we can put in Azure, those tags do not have any relevance here. But this discovery
Absolutely.
thing,
I'm saying Azure tags and Qualys tags, they are two different tags. Azure tags will not be visible here. I'm saying when you click on this VM, this resource details, you see the resource details here, right? Over here, you see all the details. So the tag that you see here, this owner name value, this tag is coming from Azure because this is the part of resource details. However, this tag has no meaning to Qualys. The tag that you see here, the tag column that you see, these are the tags that either Qualys is automatically applying to resources, or I am manually applying these tags to resources, or I am automating tag application to these resources. All the three options.
okay.
So how
And
Qualys
this,
is applying tags? Let me complete. You can see this tag internet facing. This internet facing asset is a Qualys tag. So Qualys has identified that this VM has a public IP. This VM has access to internet. So Qualys has identified this as an internet facing asset, right? Then Qualys has also identified this VM as an Azure VM. These are Qualys tags. These are Qualys default tags. The tags that I have applied is this tag, which is Azure tag and Azure resource tag. These are my tags.
okay. And the discovery happened through the connector, right? The perimeter connector.
As we speak, these resources are discovered through connector, but we can also discover resources through virtual scanner appliance.
And then we can tag those.
Absolutely. After the resources are discovered, they will show under asset inventory. Then you can select multiple resources together and apply tags to those resources. Like you can select multiple resources. For example, I've selected all 6. I can click on add tag, and I can either create a new tag or go to all tags and select a specific tag that I want to apply to these resources.
Okay.
So I can do tagging manually, or I can automatically tag resources. Choice. I'm saying I have both the options as an admin.
Perfect. Since I was not able to deploy the perimeter connector, I have only this virtual scanner. Now, how to populate this inventory? Do I need to initiate a manual scan for identifying all the assets?
Absolutely. When you run the scan from the virtual scanner appliance, and so since you don't have tags here, you don't have your. So the first thing is when you click on inventory, do you see any inventory? Any information here in the inventory tab?
Let me check inventory. Well, let me share my screen. Is it okay if I may share my screen?
Yeah, please do that.
How to reach the
Let's
inventory?
leave the screen for a moment. Go to scanner screen, appliance screen, appliance
Appliance here.
over here. Okay, so your appliance is up and running, right? It is connected. Now let's go to another module, which is asset module. Click on VMDR to your extreme left. Yeah, you can click on assets here also. That's okay. You can click on assets there also. Over here. Yeah. So here you can search for assets, right? It says search your assets. Click on search your assets. Yeah, asset search you can also do. Now here you can search for assets using tag or using IP address. So since you do not have tag, search using IP address. In the IP address range, please type the IP address range of your virtual network. The condition is your appliance and your network should have clear line of sight, because you are using appliance to search for these resources. So if your appliance does not have clear line of sight to this address space that you're putting in here, then it will not be able to search.
Okay. So mine is 4, 5, 6, 7, 4 appliances. So I'll put till 10.
No, this is not how you will put it. No, that's not how. Can you open another tab and show me your Azure virtual machines IP address or your address space?
4, 5, 6, 7. These are the private IPs.
Yeah, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So you need to put all of those IP addresses.
Yeah, I'm just putting a range from 2 to 10.
2 to 10. Okay, that's okay. Now go at the bottom and directly hit search. There is a pop-up blocker is there on the top. Please enable pop-up blocker. Now hit search once again. So it will search for resources. You can see it could not search anything,
Okay.
right? So
Yes.
do not put the IP addresses like that. Either put the range in the CIDR block or put the specific IP addresses. You can click on select button. Okay, leave it. Click on add. You have an add option here. Okay, leave that part. No, don't do it from here. Close this and put the specific IP addresses or the range inside a block. Put a specific IP address. Okay.
Can use comma separately values.
Okay. Now scroll it down. You can put additional information. No. Scroll it up. Operating system. No. Asset VM ID. No. EC2 instance. No. Okay. Just search for it now. Is it able to identify?
No. It has automatically converted it to range 4 to 7.
Yeah. Please put it into the range then. Typically, it should search for resources.
Nothing.
Okay, so no worries. If it is not searching like this, when you run the very first scan using the virtual scanner appliance, it will search for assets. Okay. Now what you need to do, go to the authenticated scan. No, don't run the scan. First give the authentication. Go to the authentication. Yeah. This is the authentication record, right?
Yes.
Provide the credentials. Look. Select both the protocols. Then in the SMB, minimum SMB, no, you don't need to select the SMB. Click on save. How are you putting that IP? Go to assets. I'm saying asset option. Here you're putting the IP range 10, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, do one thing. Put /32 against each. /32 so that it means that you're searching for this IP address only. Okay, now click on save. $10.07 are not in your account. Okay, probably give it some time because this is the process that we follow. When you run the very first scan using the appliance, the assets will automatically be discovered. Okay, or do one thing, go to asset inventory, not from here. Go to asset inventory. I'm saying go to global asset view. Other module. Other module. Asset view. Global asset view. Also, can you scroll back to your Azure subscription? I want to see whether the appliance and the assets are in the same network. Azure, where is the appliance? Which one is your appliance out of these?
This
Okay,
one, first
Tarun,
one.
Qualys. So they are in the same network, right?
Yes.
Great. Okay, let's move on.
Is it because the machines are in stop state?
Ah, yeah, that's the reason. I almost forgot. This part. You need to, so that's the reason it is not able to find them.
Okay. Start. Individual start.
Okay, now go to asset inventory. While they're getting started, go to global asset inventory. Inventory. On the top, you see inventory. Yeah, over here. Okay, here you have an option to search for assets. Inventory. So they have removed it from here. Go back to asset view, normal. There are two modules, global asset view and asset view. Yeah, asset view. Start scan. Assets on the top. You see assets over here. Now over here, click on new. Host. IP tracked assets, IP tracked addresses. General information, IP purchased. Subscription IPs. Not from here. Close this. Close this box. Click on asset search. Yeah. Over here itself. IP address range you need to type. Scroll it down. Let's look for the following attributes. Asset, VM DNS, EC2 instance, no Azure. Azure VM ID, no NetBIOS tracking method. Azure VM state. Yeah. That state. Can you select that part?
No,
That's faded. That's okay. Scroll it down. Okay, just go ahead and search for it. Search for the IPs. Is it able to find now? No host find. Okay, give it some time. Let your VM be available. Your VMs were off. That's the reason it was not coming.
Okay.
Otherwise,
Okay,
when you run the very first scan, automatically it will search for the assets.
Okay. I'll try in some time, and if
it will because this is how we do it. So typically in a production environment, when we run the very first scan from the scanner appliance, it will automatically search for all the assets.
you're correct. Why I brought out specifically this topic is that because we generally do not deploy the perimeter scanner everywhere whenever we bring up new cloud regions, but we deploy the virtual scanner appliances. With that only we are able to perform scan.
Yeah, so scanner appliance, when you perform the very first scan, it will automatically search for assets. The only thing that you need to remember is that the appliance should have a clear line of sight to those assets, and assets should be available while the scan is running. Those are the two things. Or you should have cloud agents. So are you still using scanner appliances or you're using cloud agents also?
We are using both.
Both. So for cloud agents, you don't need to search for assets. They are automatically discovered by cloud agents, right? In case of scanner appliance, when you run the very first scan, the assets will automatically be searched.
There are certain assets where we cannot deploy the agents like the Kubernetes nodes.
For
Where
that, you need to use containerized scanner appliance. We have another scanner appliance, which is containerized scanner appliance.
okay.
So
So
for
that
those
is
scanner
specifically for
appliance,
containerized.
yeah, that scanner, I'll show you that scanner appliance. It is here. And see, you can deploy container connector or you can deploy container scanner appliance. Both options are available. I'll show you.
Ravi, this might be of interest to you.
Yeah.
Uh, so when you click on scans, I'll show you how do you scan for containers. So in this appliance, you see this option, containerized scanner appliance. This is the appliance that you will deploy. So with this appliance, containerized scanner appliance, you will be able to scan your containers, which includes Kubernetes, container instances, and all the applications which are containerized. So that's the scanner appliance. That's first option. Similarly, in connector also, you have an option. So if you're going with the connector, you have a container connector available from Qualys. And if you are going with the appliances, then you have containerized scanner appliance available. Make sense?
Yeah, currently we are not leveraging this containerized scanner appliance. What we are doing is that we are deploying a virtual scanner appliance and we are opening up the communication through network security groups on the worker nodes of
Got
the.
it.
Through that way, we are trying to gain some visibility. But I think this is a
Yeah,
better way
that's
of going.
see, but then the worker node, see, there are two things. So which Kubernetes are you using? You're using it in Azure, AWS, GCP. Where exactly are you using?
All three we are using.
All three we are using. So you're using AKS, EKS, uh, and the GCP, GKE. All three you're using, right?
Yes.
So
yes.
So worker nodes are nothing but EC2 instances, virtual machines, or compute engine instances in these cloud service providers. Those worker nodes are hosting containers, and inside containers, you're running applications. Now the question is, when you enable through network security group or firewall rules, the access to worker nodes, it is only able to scan the worker nodes. But the question is it also scanning the applications which are containerized?
Got it. Got it. No,
For that, you need
I
this
feel this
container
is a
scanner
better way.
appliance.
Yeah. But we have a compensatory control for that. We are leveraging Prisma Cloud, which are running on those
That's fine.
containers.
But
So-
Prisma doesn't scan for vulnerabilities. It's a CSPM solution.
So there are different modules of Prisma. There is a CIEM module, there is a CSPM module, and they have introduced a vulnerability.
Okay. So they also have vulnerability management.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that way we have some level of visibility.
So probably that's something new from Prisma, which I have not explored, because I know that as far as CSPM is concerned, Prisma is the leader. But it is like Qualys now has a web application firewall. So similarly, Prisma has come up with vulnerability management. That's how it is. All security vendors are trying to be comprehensive now. They want to include all the capabilities so that you don't go beyond Prisma, go beyond Palo Alto. Anyways,
Containerized scan, right? So will that be able to identify vulnerabilities on each node? I mean, if we get a time, can we set up something, one or two nodes? Can we bring up something and see if it is really pushing those vulnerabilities with the containerized image? I'm not sure if that is
we don't
scope
have
of the
environment
training.
actually. What you can do if you have access to a customer environment, then you can deploy this containerized virtual scanner appliance. Even if you deploy it here, we don't have containerized environment with us. So where exactly you will run the scanner? That's the challenge.
Okay,
Right?
but in your experience, did you see vulnerabilities running exist at a node level? Did you see that?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's the reason I asked those questions. That if you just do the workaround, that's exactly what Tarun said, that they use network security group to allow clear line of sight to the worker nodes, but that does not help completely because it will not then scan the application level vulnerabilities which are running inside containers on that worker node. So if you want that visibility, you should be using containerized virtual scanner appliance. I have it running at a couple of customers' account, and it perfectly works fine. I'm saying the applications that you're running inside containers, it is able to reach to those applications and identify vulnerabilities for those applications also. That's the purpose of that appliance. Yeah. You similarly, you have Qualys container connector also. I'll show you that. Correct. You have this module, Kubernetes and container security module, and this container security module, which basically provides you a connector application similar to Cloud Connector. You can deploy with this module. You can get application level vulnerabilities. But for that, you need a separate module, container security. Probably it's not there in our. We have not taken. No. Yep, it is here. Container security module. So inside this module, you basically deploy it. So this is your container security module. Here you will configure. So this module provides you deep dive visibility inside your containers also. So it says inventory, container assets, install sensors. So you can install a cloud connector, or you can use a virtual containerized scanner also. Both options are available. You can probably go through this module. And if you have any questions, we can discuss it. So we are going to configure virtual scanner based scanning. All configuration options which are there that I was showing you, we are going to configure all of these options tomorrow. So we're going to configure all of these options tomorrow, and we will run a scan. So after we configure these two options, this is what we are going to do. We are going to run a perimeter scan. Perimeter scan that we ran today using our connector scanner or cloud connector, and we are going to run an internal scan also. That's what we are going to do. Next, then we will talk about cloud agents. So similarly, the way we have done it today, wherein we started with cloud connector, and then you identified there were some limitations. I will talk about the limitations which you will find in virtual scanner appliance, because they have their own limitations. And then I will talk about cloud agent. This is the most recent option that Qualys uses, or that Qualys recommends for usage for most of the customers or to the new customers. So we'll talk about cloud agents then, and you will see how cloud agent is a better option for running, for doing vulnerability management, because it includes on-premises, hybrid, as well as cloud assets, and it provides you far more depth vulnerabilities or far more depth inventory options. And it also has integration with third-party ITSM services like ServiceNow, BMC Remedy, Jira, or any custom ITSM connector that you have built. So you can also integrate it with ITSM solutions. So that's what we are going to talk about tomorrow. Once this part is done, then we will run vulnerability scans. We will do some end user activities with respect to the vulnerabilities that will get identified, discovered. We'll look into those vulnerabilities. I'll talk about as an end user, though you're not going to work as an end user, you will all be working probably as an admin of the solution, whose job is to design, implement, and configure the solution and hand it over to the probably the operations team who will consume the solution. But I'll also spend some time on the end user activities, or as a consumer activities, that how as a consumer you will navigate to different dashboards, you will pick up vulnerabilities, you will prioritize them, you will resolve those vulnerabilities. Once that part is done, then we will move on to the next two modules, which is file integrity monitoring and policy compliance. So that's the plan for the remainder of the session. And for tomorrow, we'll be focusing on virtual scanner and cloud agents. And I know within this, the time frame will be over. So that's for tomorrow. Thank you.